But folks, this is Open Source Friday. This is a time for us to talk to open source maintainers about things they're excited about. And today we're going to talk about Home Assistant, the open source automation tool, open sourced. I said open source twice. But real quick, some housekeeping. We do have the WiseBot, we have Nightbot. We are GitHub, so we do have a lot of concerns and moderation. So you will not be able to drop links in the chat. If you do want to drop a link, you'll have to do some trickery, or if not, we'll mention it as well. I'll catch it in chat, and I can actually drop it as well. So just FYI, and also please follow the code of conduct that's also linked below. We do respect everybody that's in the chat, but also respect our guest today, as well as respect me, because why not? But Paulus, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us sort of what you do today and sort of how you got here.
Sure. Right. So my name is Paulus Schotsen. I'm a Dutch software engineer. I no longer live in the Netherlands. I nowadays live in California. And around 7.5, maybe 8 years ago already, I started Home Assistant. And Home Assistant is an open source home automation platform that you can run at home on a Raspberry Pi. And it puts local control and privacy first. So, I started it because I got the Philips Hue lights when they got released. And I was like, it has an API and I want to control this. And then after I got control, I was like, well, damn, now I need to do something with it, right? So I had the lights turn on when the sun was setting. And then, the lights turn on when I was not at home. So I needed to have presence detection, and kind of the ball went rolling and rolling. And well, now we're here and we're 40,000 GitHub stars. I think last year we were the second most active contributed Python project tool on GitHub.
Wow.
So yeah, with more than 2,000 people, was it? I don't remember actually the numbers, or 8,000. No, I think it was 8,000 different people that interacted with our repository last year.
Yeah, and this is before the device that sort of kind of brought everything into everybody's home. It seems like the Amazon Echo device. This is pre-Amazon Echo.
Yes, it's before. And it's kind of annoying because now the Amazon and the Google devices, which I will not name them because they will activate, but
yeah,
they actually are referred to as home assistants or smart home assistants. And so I get so many pings hashtag home assistant is being used in the wrong context. And I mean, it's obviously also my fault for picking a rather generic name, but it is what it is now, right? We're here. So
yeah, so you wanted to control your smart lights, so you built this thing in Python, it sounds like.
Yes.
And it's now grown to 40,000 plus stars on GitHub,
right,
and tons of contributors. And
yes,
before we got on stream, you mentioned you have so many contributors, almost too many, which I guess is a nice thing to have.
Yes. Yeah. So the backend is Python. It's a Python application that runs with async IO. And the front end is all JavaScript. So we use WebComponents for this. And it's a progressive web application. So people can actually, you host it at home. And then from your home, you access it. So you can either open ports on your router, or you can use forwarding services like Home Assistant Cloud. And then you open this progressive web app. You can actually, with Chrome on Android or on iOS, you can actually add it to your home screen. And you have even push notifications through this. But we also realized actually progressive web apps was not enough. So we also have simple wrappers for iOS and Android. So we can send your location back, for example, right? So it's be cool. You go out and about. You can send your location back, use geofencing for your automations and stuff like that. Okay. So yeah, both JavaScript and Python.
Yeah, and there's already questions in the chat too. Michael Banvard, who's here, asking about the Pi Zero W, specifically will Home Assistant work for that? I guess, is that one of the brand new one that came out?
No, so the Pi Zero is actually a rebranded Raspberry Pi 1, but then in a smaller form factor with less ports, and it is really, really, really slow. So please don't, right? We also see it it's not being really used anymore. When we look at our download statistics, it's really Raspberry Pi 3 or higher. Okay. It's recommended. And that's actually because Home Assistant has kind of outgrown itself. So we started out as a Python application. We realized that, when we see people struggle is just to install a Python virtual environment, install a Python package. That's step one, right? Then installing is one, then maintaining it. We bump Python dependencies, we bump Python versions. And so we, when Docker came around, we're like, this is great. We need to get everybody on Docker. But you can't just like get everybody on Docker too. So we actually built our own operating system. So we have our own operating system. So you take a Raspberry Pi, or you launch in a virtual machine as well. It has an operating system which runs Home Assistant in the container, and you actually update and run Home Assistant like through the UI. There's no longer any command line tool necessary to be up and running and like updating it. So it's like a normal home automation hub you would get off the shelf or any like internet connected device. And then this is great because we can help you keep it secure, right? You don't have to deal with Python updates and Python is a great language, but dependency management in any language is just hell.
Yeah, and do you get a lot of folks who are just sort of tinkerers or maybe can, copy some scripts here and there, not full-on developers who want to do Home Assistant as well?
I mean, we have the whole range. I think in the beginning we were very technical focused. It was a lot of like configuration text files, and because it was difficult to install, I think we attracted more like people that were also system administrators, right? They have those skills. And nowadays we get like a whole wide range. So there's like, there's stories of people using it in musea, there's people using it in factories, but also people at home, tinkerers, like schools, everybody that can get their hands on a Raspberry Pi can pretty much get started with Home Assistant. And it's really cool because you don't need much, right? Even if most people will have a device that is smart nowadays, even if they don't realize, like if you have a Chromecast or a Google Home Mini, right? Those are already things that we can read out. But also, like in the recent years, there's this new chip. It's called the ESP8266. Like, I don't know if you can see this, but like this device, it's like $2-3, and it includes Wi-Fi. And so you can program these, and you can put these nodes throughout your house, and then send sensor data in, or just like have LEDs come on, and really like tinker on the like electronic side. And we see that's also been getting a lot of popularity recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's as a recent, like I love that we're doing this on Twitch, and I mentioned this too as well before we hit live. Like, there's a lot of folks who are now at home who have a lot more time. Like, I used to travel like every other week. I'd be somewhere else. I was in Europe like 4 times last year. Like, I never had time to go to sit and think about, how am I going to route this system? And like, I always leaned for the Amazon Echoes and the Google devices because out of the box, it is kind of this work, sort of.
Right.
But I'm actually super excited to see it about like what you're going to share in like the progressive web app, but also the sort of routing and all the devices that you have, I guess, from your arm's reach that you're pulling up.
Right. I got everything ready here.
Excellent. Always be ready to share your project.
Right. No, but I can show some. I definitely prepared some demos. I think the one thing I really want to show is that like how easy it is. I think a lot of people, when they think of open source, they think it's difficult to get started, or they haven't thought about that, or like it's only really for the geeks because it's open source. You have to GitHub install, like clone it and stuff. And that's not the case. We actually have been putting so much effort in making it easy because we want more people to reach it, right? We don't want to have these 8,000 people that have worked on the core or like interacted with us in the last year just for this small niche. No, we want to have, everybody be able to get this in their house if they want to.
Yeah, and it sounds like Decipher mentioned that he's been loving this, and he's just shouting out and saying thanks for your work, Paulus. And awesome. Then Bruh 5200. These names are amazing, but he's saying that he discovered it a year or two ago, and it's a huge part of his life as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you just mentioned the pandemic, like there's so many stories of people using Home Assistant to tell their kids when the homeschooling starts. So like they'll have a light turn on so the kids know, I have to go downstairs to my homeschool area or something, and the screens will start up and these kind of things. Yeah.
And there's one other question in the chat about why would you choose to run Home Assistant? Is it really, I guess their question is really, is it really focused on if you have multiple devices that you're trying to automate together and like sort of syncopation?
It's really whatever you want with it. I think that's like the diehard home automation that like want to automate everything and never see an interface. Yeah, that's possible. If you want to like configure UI and like have the dashboard as cool as possible, that's possible. If you want to write JavaScript to like make cool graphs or do cool interactions, floor plans, that is possible. I mean, it really goes all directions, and I think. I mean, the electronics people love it because with very little effort, they have a UI for the electronics project, right? It's one thing to build some electronics, but then to have a UI, read it out, control it, all that stuff is now just possible. So
Yeah.
it goes all over the place. I mean, should I just show like
Yeah,
a demo?
let's go ahead and switch over to screen sharing.
Right. So
yeah, go for it.
Can you switch to the camera real quick?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna use this device. Oh shit, it's falling.
Hopefully it's still good.
So we recently released like a case for the Odroid N2. So the Odroid N2 is like a Raspberry Pi, so we built a case. But I'm gonna use this device to do like the onboarding. So I just plugged it in this morning. So yeah, let's switch over. So once you plug it in, right? So I'm gonna go to the URL. So this is it, right? So we're seeing the onboarding. So I'm gonna type in my name. I'm gonna type in a password that's not very secure. Now it will tell me what is my name. I'll call it home demo. So to get like the location, well, I'll just do detect. Well, it says, hey, you're at the University of California, Irvine. That is correct. Although I'm in America, I do very much like my metric system.
I won't judge you.
All right, and so this is already, during onboarding, we have already seen, Home Assistant has already found 5 different devices on my network. So it has found the Belkin Wemo. You want to set it up? Yes. So now the Belkin
Wemo. Quick
question,
did you have to do any setup to make it discoverable in your network, or is this because it's on the Wi-Fi?
Like we have 3 different ways of detecting it. So we use like zeroconf or Bonjour or MDNS is one of the protocols we use. We use universal plug and play. And then recently we are also listening to DHCP requests. So for example, we had because we couldn't detect Teslas, right? And we were like, how can we detect Teslas? And so actually when a Tesla comes home, it will connect to your Wi-Fi. And it will do so with a MAC address and a host name that we can route back, oh, that's a Tesla. So now we know, oh, that's a Tesla. So for example, now this Wemo, I'm like, well, where is it? I'll do bedroom. And then for example, on the stream, I use like a Elgato key light to light myself. You want to set it up? Yes. Google Cast. I also like to set up my Google Cast. That's like Chromecast, Home Assistant, Google Home Hubs, these kind of things. Sonos I'll not set up right now, so I don't know what my kids are playing upstairs. This orange house, you might recognize this. This is the HomeKit logo. Okay. So Home Assistant speaks the HomeKit protocol, and so normally speaking the HomeKit as a controller. So normally devices only speak HomeKit to be controlled, and only iOS devices like iPads, iPhones, and MacBooks are allowed to control over HomeKit. But Home Assistant can do this too. And this means that this is my thermostat, a Lyric thermostat, and Home Assistant can talk to it locally through HomeKit without requiring any Apple device. So this way, we can control your thermostat locally, and because the HomeKit protocol is actually pretty cool, because it's local, it has great discovery, it works pretty well. But Apple has it locked down with licenses. So we're open source, so we kind of navigate differently, and so we have implemented this, and this is an option, and so you can actually control Lyric through this. So sometimes you have the option go through HomeKit or go through the cloud. Well, then of course we prefer local. So yeah, this is the third and final step of onboarding. So now I'm going to click finish. And now as you can see, am I logged in? Yes. So now I'm already, this is my, the dashboard of my house. And so, for example, I mean, this is just, this is just in 5 minutes, right? I didn't do anything special. And so, for example, this Wemo switch, I actually connected it to the light behind me. Right, so all of a sudden, during like these 5 minutes, now all of a sudden I can already control things on my stream. I can do the same thing with the Elgato key light. As you can see, this is of course what's lighting me, right? So yeah, and so you can also see that I have like 2 Google Homes. One is a Google Home Hub. I actually got it here for another demo in a bit.
Yeah, this is amazing, and you just real quick, you went from the Home Assistant documentation. That's what was the link you clicked to sort of step into this?
So I went to homeassistant.local:8123. So that's the default website where it becomes available when it starts up in your network.
Okay.
So because there's a two-step, right? First, you have to get a device that runs Home Assistant. So a Raspberry Pi or like a Odroid N2 or Home Assistant Blue. And then when you plug those in, like once the image is flashed, then you just plug them into the network. It will automatically download the latest Home Assistant, start up, discover your devices, and you go through onboarding and just kind of go with the flow from there.
Okay, that's amazing. And there are a lot of questions coming through.
I bet.
Yeah, so there's one request around configuration through YAML files, if that was a possibility.
Yes, so there is possibility to configure certain things through YAML files, but not everything. So a lot of these authentication things we discover a lot of things, and those things are running on IP addresses, but IP addresses can change and these kind of things.
Yeah.
So a lot of device configuration is no longer in YAML. And it's actually funny you mentioned this, because this is it's been a pretty long discussion inside the Home Assistant community that somebody is bringing up now. Because actually last year we made the decision, we're moving away from YAML for device configuration, and we only allow YAML for automations and scripts, scenes, the things or integrations in which you define a protocol yourself, like MQTT, for example.
Yeah.
But I mean, now I'm getting really technical really quick.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to get that deep. There are some questions around the cloud, though. Or what's the benefit of local versus cloud, and I guess remote access?
So the local's faster, right?
Yeah.
If you have a computer at your home that talks locally to the switch that's next to it, it's going to be faster.
Yep.
If your internet is down, your Wi-Fi is still up, it still works. And you're not sharing your data with anyone, right? Nobody has to know that you turned on your light, because if you think about home automation devices, they really tell a personal story about your life. What music are you listening to? What lights are on? What rooms are you using? What is the temperature you like? There's a lot of stuff that can be derived from what you're doing, and that's not something you always just want to share with everybody.
Yeah, it's a concern that I have one of those Amazon device behind me, and it's muted at the moment.
Right.
And because I don't really have any use for it other than turning on lights, and it sounds like I don't have any more use for it, because I might just switch over to this.
Yeah, I mean, I would switch over.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Right.
I will definitely be setting this up later.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I have some more demos. So one of the other things that I just talked about, like electronics, right? And I already showed this board just now. And this is actually like a prototype of something that we build out like a bit more further. But this is the ESP8266. So it's like it has Wi-Fi and it can run like code. And this is a NFC tag reader. So that way you can scan cards and then have it do stuff in your house. And I actually had this set up in my house. I printed these cards for my kids. These are all songs in either Danish or Dutch. So this is like the wheels on the bus, and this is like clapping your hands. And so each card is a song. And my son, when he was 1 year old, he could like use these cards, and he knew that he could put them on the tag reader and would start playing his song on the Sonos.
Oh, nice.
And then, of course, later he got into like service vehicles. So I also have like, the sounds of like ambulances and fire trucks. These are actually, these are the Dutch fire truck and ambulance, because I want him to know his culture. So he has to learn the Dutch fire trucks sounds.
Excellent.
But yeah, so we made this, and this code on this board is powered by like ESP Home, which is like another open source project. With YAML files, you kind of say, I use this microcontroller, and on this pins, I have this a LED or a buzzer or stuff, and then you say flash, and it just works. So we then create like with 3D printing some cases around it. So this is, for example, a tag reader in its like final form. And actually, if you open it up, you can see it's just the stuff that I just showed you, just a little bit more tied together, right? And this is also stuff that we are, it's all open source. It's all like, you can download it on GitHub. But what I want to show now is that let me open, I'm going to the integrations panel. So this is Sonos. I'm going to ignore Sonos. I'm going to ignore the lyric. So what I want to show you is that we've onboarding is really important for us. So for us, if you plug this in, it needs to work right away. So this one I've already set up before to connect to the Wi-Fi, just because it makes it a little easier for the demo. So I'm going to plug it in now, and then I'm hoping it's going to show up on my screen. Awkward. Let me see. Now.
It's okay. Only a couple of hundred of us are watching you try to plug this in.
I think when I opened it, I moved it around or something.
No worries. And thanks to the WinDev who's answering all the questions. You got a lot of fans in the chat at the moment answering questions about Home Assistant.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so I managed to plug it in. That's good. It's plugged in now. So now it should, when it connects to the Wi-Fi, there it goes. Boom. It's like, hey, I discovered a tag reader. Do you want to configure it? Sure. I configure it and finish, and it's set up. So now we actually have a dedicated tag section in Home Assistant. And so there you go. I have one tag here, like a card. I'm going to hold in front of it. Boom. And you see immediately, hey, we scanned the tag. That's great. So now I can scan like a card. Boom. It's then also in the UI, hey, you scan the card. So this is cool because now we can actually start automating it, right? If we want to build our own way, like a music jukebox. So for example, we can say this card, which was the white card I just had. Well, let's just say we call it movie. And so you can actually scan these cards because NFC is also in our phones. You'll be able to use the Home Assistant app also to scan these cards and also trigger the same thing in Home Assistant. So either you can use a tag reader or your phone, tap it, and it will do some automation. So now I'm going to do a quick automation with this. So to automate it is also super easy. So we just click on the robot. And it says, OK, when a tag movie is scanned, let me just get some more space. So the trigger is already set. When I scan the movie tag, then the action, I'm actually going to a surface. Oh, man, I think it's just like, oh, yeah, there it is. The sharing window overlay is like just on top of it, but it's gone now. Good. Okay. So I'm going to call a surface. So I'm going to call the media player.play media. So what I want to do is that I had this Google Home Hub I just showed. Wouldn't it be cool if we can like play a video on it, right? So right now I already prepared. So here's like, we're gonna write some mini YAML. We still have a lot of YAML, but we try to like, when it's necessary for complicated structures, we're actually improving this one. We will show some YAML. So I need like a movie to play. So I'm just gonna quickly Google the Blender has this Bug Bunny demo.
Yes, I've seen that.
Which is
so I went to the Blender talk at last year's FOSDEM.
Okay, it's so cool. It's like I wish more people would like, I don't know. There's more software like that. Okay, yeah. So I'm just typing this now, but in the future I hope this can do the UI. Okay, so that's it. I click. We're gonna play media. We're gonna play that video that I just shared on the dev display. I'm gonna click save. Now, of course, I'm gonna show my Google Home Hub. Let's see if it works. There you go.
Amazing.
So this just happened just when I was, this just happened whenever I just scanned it. But now, because now we're playing something, we can actually see on my screen, the dev display. Oh, it makes a lot of noise. Let me just pause it through Home Assistant.
Yeah, that's amazing.
This is all instant. So even when I click play here, you'll see immediately in Home Assistant, we know it's playing again. And we say, okay, shut it down. And we're back to the screen.
Wow, this is this is amazing for parents because I know I went through the first couple months of the quarantine watching Frozen 2. Knowing that was going to be the go-to, it would have been nice just to tap the card or give the card to my daughter.
Right.
she can tap the card, get that going, and then because we know we're gonna watch that twice a day, so might as well get that out of the way.
Right, I have the same but with cars.
Excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this was just like kind of a demo of kind of stuff that people built around Home Assistant and how it like all smoothly integrates. And you know, when there's just so much fun stuff that you can do around this, right? I think that the biggest challenge our users have is that everything is possible, right? And people just kind of want to have, I wish I would also just a checkbox to automate this or do that. And that's kind of stuff also that's all obviously also in the pipeline, but it's because everything is possible. When you go on YouTube and you type Home Assistant, I mean, it goes all over. It's really, really cool.
That's awesome. So you just walked through a quick demo on how to get yourself set up on your existing devices. But
yeah,
outside of this, are there recipes or examples or sort of like a one-stop shop to sort of learn?
To create devices or to integrate existing ones?
Actually, a little bit of both. So integrating existing ones, I imagine if they can connect to your Wi-Fi, then you're halfway there with Home Assistant. Yes. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we actually, if we go to the Home Assistant website and we go to integrations, we have currently 1,743 different devices and services that integrate into Home Assistant. And so, I mean, there's things like an IKEA Lights or Lutron or Shelly or Plex or Sonos, like a lot of different things that are just, they have their own hubs and we integrate with that. But then we also have home automation protocols. So you get a bit lower level. So that's the Z-Wave and Zigbee you see at the bottom. And to work with those, you actually need like a USB stick, right? So you plug a USB stick into your device. And then in Home Assistant, you set up the Zigbee or Z-Wave integrations. And then, it just runs. And then we go from there, and there's like a control panel you can pair. And, whenever you set up something in Home Assistant, you can put it in an area. You can then also make this available to Google Home or Amazon, so you can control it by voice. Or, I mean, the possibilities are really endless, right?
Yeah.
Which is the challenge, I guess.
Yeah, and the challenge is really just sitting down and doing something, which I think this could be a world of like this could be my weekend. Like literally this weekend, I might be setting up that light outside my room to go red whenever I start streaming.
Well, that's something that we just discussed before we went on air, but in the Home Assistant has an official app for the Mac, and it's actually a port of our iOS app. Apple made this thing that's compatible for both. And it's really cool because once you set up the Home Assistant Mac app, it will integrate and push all its data from your Mac to Home Assistant and make it available. And this also includes when your camera is on or not. So all of a sudden you can start automating, hey, when my camera goes on, automatically turn on my streaming lights or automatically dim the background light so it looks better for my stream. And then also, like you were saying, hey, let's turn a light outside of my door to like blink red so people know they don't or shouldn't enter.
Yes. Before we went on stream, I think I have a very little one, and that came in the room like probably 5 times just to look at me smiling and wave hi. But yeah,
right. Yeah, that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, but maybe the red light would keep them. Well, they'll probably still come in, but all the best laid out plans.
Right. You can set up a motion sensor so that when they pass the red light, it will play a sound on the other side of the hallway, so they get distracted and then turn around.
Yeah. So there's a that was actually really funny, but I'm looking at this question. Actually, it's a question. Things like this. So I see the Philips Hue, and like we know that Philips Hues need like sometimes they need a hub to sort of connect the different light bulbs. Will you also need a hub to connect through the light bulbs if you had like if you wanted to connect your Home Assistant rather than another device?
It depends. So Philips Hue uses Zigbee, right, under the hood. So there needs to be a place where we are able to send Zigbee commands. So either you have the Philips Hue hub already set up, and then we talk over Wi-Fi to your Philips Hue hub, and then your Hue hub talks to your Hue lights. Yeah. Or you get a Zigbee stick, a USB stick, and then we talk to the Zigbee stick generally over serial connection, just connected to the device, and then the Zigbee stick will talk to your Hue lights. And actually, the benefit of using Zigbee directly instead of Hue is Hue is an ecosystem, right? And they are not very friendly to Zigbee devices that are not part of their ecosystem. So you're less able to pull data in, and they also don't send data to us the moment it happens. So for example, if you have a motion sensor in Philips Hue hub, it can take up to 5 seconds for Home Assistant to know, which is too long, right? If you enter a room, the lights should turn on right away. And so if you have a Zigbee stick, your lights can create a mesh network, and that's how the data goes through your house, come together with the sensors and all the other Zigbee stuff that would not be available inside the Philips Hue hub. So generally, Philips Hue hub is a good way for people to actually get into home automation.
Yeah.
And when they start using Home Assistant, they can use it, and then eventually they can decide, okay, I'm ready for the real deal, and then they go native Zigbee.
Okay, excellent. And I guess my next follow-up question would be, is there a place to learn some of these sort of, like you have a lot of experience, so is there like a
Yes.
forum or another place where I can get some experience from other users?
Yes, definitely. So we have a very, very active Discord, and we have a very active forums. So if you go to our website and you scroll down, then there's the join the community card right here.
Yep.
And there's the forums and there's the chat. And then, I mean, both are really active. So we have, there's some people prefer forums, some people prefer chat. So we have both available. And yeah, it's all, I mean, if you look at the forums, it's like third-party integrations, installations, hardware, mobile apps, community guides. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. So 2 things that are really cool on our forums. One is share your projects. This is where people are just like sharing new stuff that they are like building. Like somebody built like a refrigerator monitor, and they will share all the different parts and then how they have done it. And then they will also, this is, for example, an ESP home project, so they'll share the configuration. And then, look, and they get push notifications from the Home Assistant app, for example, if the door has been left open, right? Which is pretty cool.
I love this. And actually, my original question, I think I was actually asking for this as well, the share your project section, because I want to basically find out what my weekend project is, and just instead of answering emails and doing work, I want to look through this thing all day.
Right. So the other thing we're doing now is that if on the Home Assistant website, every week, and like we were pretty bad at it for a while, but now we're back at it, the community highlights. So we try to post every week kind of cool stuff that people are doing. So, I mean, this is just like random people that are finding stuff in Home Assistant or that are related to Home Assistant, and we highlight like 3 of them. So this person, for example, made a laundry cart that sits in our interface, and with JavaScript has animated it to see what the state of your laundry is. And I mean, people do so many cool stuff with it. I'm going to show you how to do some cool stuff with JavaScript also in a bit. But I mean, this is, there's a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I'm super excited to learn to see what more examples you have. So yeah, definitely take it away. There was one question though, real quick. Something about Home Assistant and the support for the CHIP, the chip.
Chip, yes. So chip is a new home automation standard that is being worked on. It's not available yet, but we're definitely going to look into it and integrate it. And the nice thing about chip is that this is the first home automation standard which is developing their own open source reference implementation. So until now, for Zigbee and Z-Wave, we had to have our own people or open source developers that build out these infrastructure. And with Chip, it's actually the companies, and this is like, all the big names are behind it, both from like, the big tech like Apple, Google, and Amazon, but also like Philips and IKEA and Xiaomi and these companies. And they're together building this open source reference implementation that we can all start using. So when we have this integration going, it will be super solid, I bet.
Okay, excellent. That's good to
know. It's
going
to come, definitely. So this is the Home Assistant UI. I already showed it a bit, right? Like I can turn the light on behind me. And all of this is JavaScript, of course. It's a browser, right? And so we actually use a thing called WebComponents. And so I want to show you how we can actually build our own cards. And to do that, I first need an editor. And so with Home Assistant, I already talked before about how we became like an operating system. And so we actually have different, besides just Home Assistant, you can also install other applications that we have figured out, like that also run in containers. So there's a lot of them.
I see
But this is
Almond, which got mentioned in the chat earlier.
Yes, that's a project by Stanford to build out a voice assistant.
Gotcha.
That is open source and privacy focused. They just got $1 million grant from the Sloan Foundation, and they're getting some developers to like make it better. But development is stalled a little bit right now. So in this, all these add-ons that you can just install, some are like, for example, InfluxDB is a very popular metrics database. There is the Jupyter Lab. This is for data science. So you can actually, once you install this, with one click, you have notebooks that connect to your Home Assistant database, and you can start, learning from your own data. The one that I wanted to show, a Spotify Connect, is another really cool one. It will actually turn your Raspberry Pi into a target that you can play Spotify on. So if you have, how in Spotify you have like which device do you want to play on, and there's like shows like Chromecast and Sonos devices, it will actually show your Home Assistant. And so if you connect an audio jack into your Raspberry Pi, boom, you have another smart speaker. But the one I want to show today is the Visual Studio Code. So we all know Visual Studio Code. It's the code editor by Microsoft. So I'm going to install it. And Visual Studio Code actually uses Electron, right, which is a technology by GitHub to run. It's pretty much a browser with a Node backend. And so Visual Studio Code actually runs also in a browser. We see that with GitHub Code Spaces.
Yep.
We also make this available inside Home Assistant. And so we make this available inside Home Assistant, and then we also automatically configure it with the Home Assistant Visual Studio Code extension, which is really cool because it sets up an active connection to your Home Assistant, and it will auto-complete with like the latest state and latest entities when you're writing your YAML files. Okay, so I'm going to show it in the sidebar. That's good. I'm going to start it. So this is like a demo that like I haven't really prepared because, so we're going to see how it's going to go.
Those are the best types of demos.
Yes. So starting the code server. I think it's good. Let me just see if I get Visual Studio Code. There you go. We are in Visual Studio Code. So on the left, you actually see my configuration directory. You can see there's like some configuration already going. So the first thing we're going to do is that we want to make JavaScript available to our front end. So we actually have a special directory that we're going to create. It's called the www directory. And the moment we create a www directory, we have to restart Home Assistant. So let me see. We actually have a quick jump in Home Assistant. So if you want to restart Home Assistant, you can just search for it, click on it. Okay, so now Home Assistant is being restarted. So it also means Visual Studio Code is being disconnected. You can see in the bottom left, well, my face is on top of it, but the connection is lost. But it's okay. So in Home Assistant, everything we use it's called like a unidirectional data flow. So in Home Assistant with web components, every web component passes down the state of the home, and we can access this. All right, so we're back in action. Home Assistant is started. So now we can actually create a card. And I'm gonna walk through this really slow, but also sometimes a little fast. If I go too fast, definitely let me know.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat for you.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna wow. Okay, so we're gonna create an example card. So I prepared some basic code, and I'm gonna go through this code. What I do here is that, in JavaScript, we can import, right? And we're all used from writing JavaScript that goes through bundlers that we actually import from like node modules. But that's actually not necessary. Browsers have native support for imports. So in this example, I will import directly from unpackage.com. So unpackage.com, we can follow this link. And you can actually see this is just JavaScript. This is going to run in my browser. And because there's question mark module in the URL, it will actually import all the things it needs as well. So the browser is just going to resolve and just run all this JavaScript without any bundling. So I'm going to use lit element, which is a web component framework. So in lit element, you need to define the properties that are going to trigger a re-render. So in this case, has and config are going to be the re-rendering. When those are changed, it should re-render. So has is the state object that I just talked about, the unidirectional data flow, and I'm going to show what's inside in a bit. Config is going to be the configuration for our card. So we want to create our own card. Now, as a temporary placeholder, I'm just going to render hello, so that when we look at it, we know it works. When the configuration is updated, we're just going to store it, this.config, and this is just a placeholder for some CSS. Okay, so this is good. Now we have this card. Let me make sure it's saved. My keyboard shortcuts work. Okay, so the next step is that we have this dashboard, but I don't want to mess with my main dashboard. So you can actually create multiple dashboards. But to do that, we're also going to add custom JavaScript. So I'm going to turn on advanced mode. So just really quick in the settings, here's advanced mode. Now I'm going to see more options, some options that we need. Okay, Lovelace dashboards. So this is our dashboard. So the first thing is that I'm going to tell Lovelace, which is how our user interface is called, that it should load our card. So I'm going to add a resource. And so I called it example card. So typing it here. So now whenever Lovelace loads, it will also load my custom JavaScript. Great. Now we're going to create this. So now it's loaded. Now I'm going to create a new dashboard, which I call GitHub demo. Show it in sidebar. Okay, create. Now, there's a second one called GitHub demo now. It looks the same as the first one because it's automatically generated. If there's no configuration for your dashboard, we just try to make something of it. We've recently tweaked it a bit. It needs more tweaking. But yeah, so I'm going to edit this dashboard. So take control of your Lovelace UI. What we're pretty much saying is like, listen, we're going to throw away your auto-generated. Do you want to keep the auto-generated or do you want to just start empty? And so in this case, I will be like, just start empty. So that like, I want everything to be gone. So now I'm in edit mode of this dashboard. And so the first thing is I need to add a tab because we need to have at least one tab to put things in. So I call this demo, save. So now I want to add a card. So in the Home Assistant, we have a lot of pre-made cards that you can just use out of the box. And if you see demos, so there's like an entities card, there's like a single entity, there's a history, there's like big lights, there's a markdown card, so you can have markdown as you write on GitHub, show pictures, floor plans is a possibility, and all these things are just pieces of JavaScript, of course. So what I'm going to do now is at first I'm going to add my custom card. That's the first step. So I'm going to go click on manual. So my custom card, I call it example card, right? So I'm just going to write here example card. Boom, hello, great. Now I'm going to add some entities. I'm actually going to add some fake entities as well, just so it looks a bit nicer. And I'm going to hit save. So now this is the JavaScript that I was just editing, and it's now available here in my browser. Now, I'm going to edit a bunch of other entities that we're going to... I want to show that like we have multiple entities, so I'm going to have our... the Wemo Insight switch, I want to show it here as well, so you can see that it's all instant. So here's the switch, so I'm going to close it down. So we have my custom card, and we have a built-in card. And as you can see, this one just works. Okay. So now, I want to show you how the state object works that we're passing around. So if we look in the console here, this you can see it's a UI entities card. And because we use web components, we don't need any special browser tools. It's all built into the browser. So if we open the console of this, we can actually see, I have to have this one open. What's going on? Awkward. Okay, well, that did not work as intended. Now I can leave, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna find a different. Okay, look, here we have our object. So this is all the state of our whole home. And it has some helper functions like call a service, turn something on. So the one that we're interested in is going to be, of course, states. The state has all the states of our whole house. So for example, our Wemo inside switch, we can see the state is off. We can see when it last changed, last updated, its identifier. Okay, so now we would like to have this state also being shown in our cart. And I actually realized that I'm going to open Visual Studio Code in a new tab. I actually want to, what's going on?
Mario just dropped in console.log. Is there a way to log the output to see if...
Yeah, but it should, so with the $0, it should take the data from the selected element.
Okay.
Which didn't. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some demo lights. By having some demo lights, you can actually see we have YAML validation.
Yeah.
So by having some demo lights, we're going to be able to have some lights that are not connected to physical lights. That way, if you're developing UI, you're not making yourself or the people in your house crazy. So we're going to restart the server again. And actually our UI, even though we're offline, it will continue to, like you can still look at it like it's, we can still navigate around. It will just, the state will not update until we are back online again.
Okay.
So I can, yeah, so this is, so Home Assistant is starting, not everything is available yet. We're back online. Yep, I can control my lights again. So now I want to actually edit, I'm going to add my demo lights in, also in the entities card. And I'm just going to quickly use YAML for that because I have a copy paste ready. There you go. So these bottom three lights, they're fake. They don't exist.
Okay.
But they're great because I can mess with them. We can like turn them on. We can change the colors of them. And it all shows in the UI. Okay, so now we have this custom card. And I had already configured my custom card to pass in the entities I want to show. So all that we have to do with custom cards is that Home Assistant will set the has object on it. So if we look at my example card that we have here, if I go click at has, I can see, oh, we actually have access to the has object. And we have access to the configuration that we just typed into YAML. So we can see it's a type custom example card, and we have 4 entities. So now it would be cool to show the state in our custom card, right? That's the goal. So we're going to open my example card. So we know that this is our, this is what we're rendering, right? And so this is actually using tag template literal. So this is just a JavaScript. It was introduced in ECMAScript 2015, and it will just, you write it inside a string, and it actually gets converted to HTML, and it is very optimized in updating. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just very basic. I'm going to render a list, just because I know that's like, that's easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to iterate over our configuration. So I say this.config.entities, and I'm going to say for every entity that we have, I want to render something. So what we want to render is that I first want to, we just have the entity ID, it's an identifier. So we need to get the state. So to get the state, we just showed it was in this.has.states. And so we can just pull it out. So we just say, hey, give me the entity ID. Now, just a small guard, because we never know what's going on. If no state, don't return anything. But if there is anything, then we're going to say, render the state. So we want to, of course, render the name, which is stored as an attribute, friendly name, and then we want to render the state. Okay, so now we have a list, and for every entity that we passed in, we fetch the state, we print the name, and we print the state. Oh, and let me just close the li tag. Okay, so now I'm going to refresh this, and it should all work. I don't know if I saved it.
It looks saved.
Yeah. Oh, you know
Is
what?
this server running?
Yeah, I should disable the cache.
Ah,
There you go. Okay, we have the state. As you can see, the Wemo Insight is off, backlight is off, ceiling lights on, kitchen lights on. Cool. Let's see if it works. Yes, it instantly updates. Because it's all tied, right? Like every time we click on one of these buttons and we actually control a light, right? You can even control the real light. It will just tell the card, hey, this is the latest data. And this is all with a WebSocket service. The front end is being kept up to date instantly, whatever happens in the back end. It also actually means if you have two tabs open with the UI, it will also be instant. You can see it instantly update on, for example, if I have my phone open, it will instantly update if I change the lights. But of course, now this kind of looks meh, right? We want to have some cool looking card, right? We didn't want to write JavaScript just to show the state. So we want to have some control. So to do that, I'm actually going to use this framework. It's called Wired Elements. And it's a web component framework that you can use to create kind of wireframes. So it kind of looks how you like would draw it. And so these are actually also web components. So we can put this inside our card. So I'm going to do this, and I've actually already prepared the two import statements that I want to use. So just at the top of my file, I'm going to do paste. As you can see, I'm going to import wired card and wired toggle. So what I'm going to do first is that I'm going to, in my HTML that I'm returning, I'm going to do, let's do a card. I'm doing an elevation of 2. That way it looks kind of nice. Okay, let's see if this works. Boom. Okay, that already starts looking nicer, right? We're getting somewhere. Now, of course, this card should be as wide as all the other cards. It kind of should fall in place. So that means we have to add some CSS. So in our CSS, and with web components, everything runs inside a shadow root, which means that the CSS doesn't escape. So I don't have to use any fancy selectors. I can just do whatever I feel like is going to be the selector that is as generic as possible, because it's only tied to the elements that I'm talking about here. So in my case, I want to just take up the space. I want it to be a block, right? So I do display block. Okay, great. Starting to look better. Now the other thing I just pulled in was the wired toggle. So that's a toggle like this one, but then it looks like hand-drawn. So that looks a lot cooler. So we have the HTML here. I know some people are probably going to be upset that my formatting is horrible, but that's it for now. So wired toggle, and so I know it has a check property. So we can just do checked equals, and then we say if state.state equals on, because that's what we know is that it's on. Okay, so now if I save it and I refresh, boom, we have these beautiful toggles, little big, and if I change them, we can see them updating instantly. So this is cool. Now, of course, it needs to look a little better, and they need to work, right? So to make it look better, I'm just going to turn these into divs. I'm going to remove the state, so it's just going to be name and the wired toggle, and then on these divs, I'm just going to say, okay, display flags, justify content, space between, so that like the name is being pushed to the left and the toggle is being pushed to the right. We're going to do some padding on it just for the 16 pixels today. And then we want to also make sure that the text and the toggle are kind of centered together. So we just do align items center. Okay, so let's see if this is going to look a little better.
Nice. Flexbox for the win.
Oh, yes. Okay, I see I still have the UL around it because there's a lot of ugly margins. So we're going to remove the UL. That's all from our initial demo. I'm going to remove the H1. Okay, so now let's see. Okay, good. I think the 16 pixels is actually a bit too much. I'm going to set that to 8. I mean, it's just a demo, but it needs to be visually pleasing. Have a refresh. Okay, This is great. And just a reminder, this is not a dev environment, right? This is just production Home Assistant, and we're just kind of messing with text files inside Home Assistant to get this all going. So the last step is that whenever it changes, we need to update, right? So we need to listen to the change event. So in lit element, when you put a dot in front of the name, it will set the property. So it's just JavaScript objects being passed around. So this is a Boolean being passed around. This is not actually, if we look at the source here, I know it's not very visible because of the zooming, but there's just a class on it. There's no...
you're not importing like things like React or Vue to make this work.
No. This is
as
all
you mentioned,
in the browser.
Web components. Yeah.
Yes. And so but you also don't see the checked attribute anymore. We know it's set there. Like we can read it out, right? And we can actually set it here to be true. And then we see the toggle changing in the UI because this is how the state works, right? Whenever we set the state, it will update itself. So now we want to listen to events. So I know that the wire toggle, I'm just going to add some white space here just for some readability. We know that when the wire toggle fires, like changes, it fires a change event. And so to listen to events on DOM elements, we use the @ sign. So we just say, okay, when it's being changed, and I actually don't really care about the event because I know when they toggle it, they want to toggle it, right? So then I just the has object, which gives us the state, also had this call service event, which I kind of glanced over earlier. So what we can do now is that we say, hey, call a service. So we're going to just use the generic Home Assistant service parent because they know, they will figure out if it's a light or a switch. Then we know if state.state equals on, we need to call turn off. Otherwise, we need to call turn on. And I'm just going to add some more white space because I can already see this going horribly.
Right?
And so the only thing is now, of course, now we would just say, hey, what needs to be turned on? So Home Assistant also needs to know what needs to be turned on. So I'm going to pass it as an options object to the service call. And so we're going to say entity ID is state.entityID. Good. So now we say when the change event fires on a toggle, call this service. If it's on, call the turn off service, otherwise call the turn on service and pass in the entity ID. Now, of course, let's see if it works. So we have this, I'm gonna turn it on, boom. There you go. So we just built our custom JavaScript widget, pulled in some custom components that are just being served from the internet, just from unpackage.com, no bundling or anything necessary. And now all of a sudden we have JavaScript that is bound to the physical world through Home Assistant, right? And you can see the moment I turn on something here below, it will immediately update above. That keeps working as well.
Yeah, so in I guess in practice too as well, if you wanted to build your own WYSIWYG, your Home Assistant dashboard, you could also deploy this as well if you wanted to get this in like a React Native app or something similar.
So React, it's funny you call React because React actually doesn't work well with Shadow DOM. So if you want to use React inside Home Assistant, we generally say use Preact because they don't have the issue, or you build your own full UI. So right now we live in the Home Assistant front end. And so the Home Assistant front end will host your card, set up the connection and do all that stuff. But actually, it's actually great you bring this up because you don't have to, because we published a library, Home Assistant JS WebSocket, which can set up your WebSocket connection, set up your authentication, and do it all for you. So I'm going to actually, I'll show you a quick demo. So I have this up on Glitch, and this is actually 50 lines of code. So it's the Home Assistant auth demo. Woo, it's starting up, and it's just a static website. It's a static website, and when you go to it, it will be like, what is your Home Assistant instance URL? It's already pre-filled in with the default address, which is the address that we also use. So I say, connect to Home Assistant. Now it will connect. It will actually show a login page on my local Home Assistant. And it will say, you're about to give hasauthDemo.glitch.me access to your Home Assistant instance. Yes, that's what we want. So I'm going to log in. Now being brought back to Glitch. This is the UI in Glitch.
Nice.
This is not anymore Home Assistant. So now when we go to my Wemo Insight, I can toggle it, boom. And with custom, like this is completely custom UI that is now controlling the light behind me. And there's no Home Assistant UI involved at all. You can do this all completely yourself. And this one is actually really 50 lines. So if I open the editor, boom, 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 and we go to the JavaScript. So this is just a render function of what you saw on the screen. It's really just like, it's really plain vanilla JavaScript, create element, no framework at all, right? Just create a button and toggle, call the services. But the whole, to create a connection and to set up the whole OAuth flow, all you have to do is call like the create, you have to just call Home Assistant WebSocket.getAuth, and then it will take care of the whole OAuth flow for you. And in the end, you just end up with a connections object, and then you subscribe to the entity. So that's what's happening here. And let me just zoom in a bit more. If you subscribe to the entities here, whenever new entities come in, whenever a state changes, you can just render it and then do something with it. So here, I toggle my light, new state comes in. But if I go back to my Home Assistant and I toggle the light here and I go back, I also see it's off, right? Because it's instantly updated. So even though this is super basic JavaScript, 50 lines of code, okay, 68. It's all instant update, and it's just really easy to build stuff.
Yeah, nice. I'm excited to get my hands on this stuff. And you've walked through, and folks who jumped into as well. I didn't interrupt you in the middle of your setting up the components, but we basically got an introduction to Home Assistant. We got an introduction to documentation and how to sort of connect devices through their dashboard. And then Paulus showed us how to build components as well using the connection to the dashboard. I guess the socket. And yeah, this is amazing. So like you could actually have, if I wanted to keep a machine downstairs and connect to the lights, like if I had, well, I do have 2 laptops, but keep one downstairs and one upstairs, and I can still be able to connect to all my devices. And I guess the same with the phones as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, appreciate you coming through. I don't know if you have any more demos or demonstrations to share.
I can keep going and go, there's just no. I mean, I don't really have anything right now. I think if people want to like start playing with Home Assistant, right? If you are more a JavaScript developer, you can build amazing front-end widgets. We actually have a really strong community also around sharing these widgets and sharing ideas and like building cool cards of, for example, how the solar panel generation and your power usage and how much you give to the grid, and like they show that kind of nice in a graph. And the other day I did I took some SVG animation of pulling a cord and connected that to Home Assistant. And I mean, if you're into JavaScript, definitely check out our front end. It's really fun to play with, and I think the cool part is that it actually controls something in the physical world, and it's actually also something that is being controlled in your home. I think actually that's something I haven't mentioned yet, but one of the things that's so fun about Home Assistant is that you can actually use your programming skills to actually improve your own life, right? A lot of open source work is about enterprisey stuff like frameworks, building forms, these kind of things. And those are fun, but that's only if you're building products for like a lot of people. What is for me more satisfying is that with Home Assistant, you're building stuff that is directly going to improve your own life or the people that live in your house. Or if it's not improving life, at least it's a lot of fun. And that's just something that we don't always see, right? A lot of open source projects is about the better website making or a better app. And here it's just, hey, we're controlling lights. It's fun.
Yeah, indeed. And I'm a lifelong tinkerer. I love having little projects like this. And like I'm already knowing how easy it was to get your stuff in the dashboard. Like I mentioned, I already have a bunch of pluggable lights that I connect to devices just to get lights on and off. simplistic, but I'm ready to actually bypass any sort of future Echo devices and going directly to Home Assistant for that. So appreciate you taking the time. I did send something in chat. Lurksa, who's been super helpful in answering questions to Home Assistant while you were chatting. They have an Home Assistant automation to turn off their Spotify when they have a call. So like, yeah, if you've got a Zoom call or a calendar invite,
really cool.
Stop all music and get to business, which is pretty cool. So I said that in the Zoom chat, folks. You saw that in the Twitch chat as well, if you want to check that out. And the other thing I wanted to mention too as well, since we're here, everybody, this is Open Source Friday. We do have a meetup page. The meetup page is just the focus is so we can easily just tell you what events are coming up next. If you have a better way to do this, I'm all ears. You can find me on BWO, and we can set up some automation or integrations to notify people. We just don't have a really good way to do it yet, and we sort of scrapped this together earlier this year in May. Had the idea, we're all home, we might as well bring open source maintainers to talk about their projects. So you could find out what's coming up next, which next week is going to be maintainer organizational level management for through the OctoKit herd. OctoHerd is the actual project. He was here back in May. Next week, we're going to talk about automating multiple repos. Gregor manages 25 plus repos, and he's just going to share some insight on how to orchestrate the management of all those projects. He's like the solo maintainer on those 25 repos. So he does automate, solo maintainer, but he has contributors. So he will automate a lot of that. And then we're going to talk about, the week after that, we'll talk about AI automation for testing automation for visual testing with GitHub Actions. Colby will be here to talk about his GitHub action and how he uses that visual testing. So those are the two events we have booked so far the next few weeks. And then some folks enjoyed mine and Michelle's session where we built a GitHub Twitch integration here right on chat. We'll hopefully have it done. We'll be doing another stream next week, which is not booked yet, but it will show up soon. Also, shout out to the GitHub, the YouTube GitHub. If you want to watch this video, you can watch it here on Twitch, but in 2 weeks it goes away. Definitely check out the YouTube channel, and we'll have it posted in the next day or so. But any final words of encouragement for our viewers?
I mean, I didn't really prepare any statements, but I know, just tinker and have fun. I think that is, play with technology. Don't always feel obliged that it has to be pixel perfect or has to be super clean code. If it works and you just have it in your house, that's already good enough. And that's a lot more fun. And then sharing can be the second step. Just, just play and tinker with technology. It's great.